then you progress to the central piece of the cold call process, which is just to ask a few questions. And this is the key to your success when you're cold calling and when you're just being a salesperson in general, because not only asking a few good questions gets the call more focused on the prospect than focused on you and your product. It gets the prospect engaged and talking. It helps you to extract valuable information from the prospect that you can use to find opportunities and generate leads. And asking questions is the key to you being able to close the prospect at the end of the cold call process. And the key to closing the prospect on talking more is finding a justification and a reason for talking more. And the best way to find that justification is to ask good questions. One group of questions to ask are our pain questions. So we just did a sales takeaway. I don't know if we can help you in the same way. If I could ask you real quick, how difficult is it for you guys to get reps to have clarity around what best to say and ask when they're talking to prospects? And so what we're doing here and what our pain questions are designed to do is to find out, how is it going in the area where we have something to sell? Are things great? Are they good? Just okay? Or are things not very good? And if we can identify that things are not very good or maybe even just okay, that gives us a justification for talking more. We could also use our current state questions in that exact same way. So we just did our sales takeaway. I don't know if we can help you in the same way. If I could ask you real quick, hey, are you guys using any type of sales script or sales playbook today? Of course, these current state questions are designed for what I sell, and your current state questions will be specific to what you sell. But these questions are really efficient and effective at learning what's going on with the prospect that you're talking to identify, are things good, great, just okay, or not very good, and help you to uncover that justification in talking more. Now, whether you should ask current state questions first or pain questions first, I can't really tell you. It might depend on what you sell, or it might depend on who you're calling and how the conversation's going. But one rule of thumb is that if you sell more of a commodity type product, in terms of it's something that a lot of your prospects are already using and have already likely purchased, current state questions are good to lead with so that you can just learn what they're doing in the area where your product fits. But if you sell something that's more unique and maybe the prospect doesn't even know what the heck it is that you sell, in those situations, sometimes pain questions are better to lead with, and then you can transition to maybe current state questions after you've started with pain questions. Now, having a good list of questions to ask and knowing what questions to ask will get you going in the right direction. But if you really want to get to the next level, you also need to prepare for how the prospect is going to respond to your questions. Whenever you ask a question, the prospect is going to say something, and what do we do then? And it's good to prepare for all of those different scenarios, which can sound a little overwhelming when you think about all the different questions you have and all the different ways a prospect can respond. But the cold call process provides a system that can make it much easier to figure out what to say for all the different ways the prospect can respond. And the way that we do that is we actually provide 3 categories that you can use for all of the different ways that the prospect can respond to all of your different questions. The first category is a hot response. This is when you ask a question, either a pain question or a current state question, and the prospect responds in a way where things are not great. In other words, they have pain and there's a tremendous amount of room for improvement. And we call this a hot response because this is like hitting bingo or hitting jackpot on a slot machine, where this is exactly what you're looking for because you're looking for a justification in talking more, and that type of answer gives you that. This would be similar to a doctor asking questions about symptoms and the patient has the exact symptoms leading to them having a particular diagnosis and a need for the medicine that the doctor has. The next category we refer to as neutral. And this is where you ask a question and the prospect can't say that things are great, and they also can't say that things aren't going good. They either say things are just okay, or maybe they don't know the answer to your question, or they don't know how things are going. This would be like a doctor asking a patient how they feel, and they can't say that they feel great, but they also aren't necessarily saying that they feel bad either. And the third category is a cold response. This is when you ask a pain question or a current state question, and the prospect responds that things are either great or going pretty good. This would be like a doctor asking a patient how they feel, and they say, I feel great and I've never felt better. So we have these very simple categories, and we can have a list of 100 different questions asked, but we can put all of the answers and all of the different ways the prospect responds into these 3 categories. And what that does is then we can have very simple rules to where to go next and what to do depending on the type of response that we hear. For example, if we ask a question or two and the response or the responses are hot, we can actually skip ahead in the cold call process and stop asking questions and move towards closing the prospect on talking more because we have that justification for talking more. But we're actually not going to skip all the way to the last step of the process, which is the close, because what we want to do is we want to build a little bit of interest before we go for the close. And so we advance to the step right before the close where we want to share just a little bit of information about us. And the way to transition to that next step is you might say something like this after you hear that hot response. You might say, well, actually, based on what you shared so far, it might make sense for us to talk more because that's actually the type of thing that we help with. And then you share some of your product and company information. Now, I'll show you what that looks like, but before I do that, let's talk about the other direction you can go if you get some of those other responses. Let's say that you get a neutral response, so the prospect says, things are okay, or I'm not sure, or you've asked a few questions and the prospect says, everything's going really good. In this case, we did not find that justification for talking more, so instead of progressing towards the close, we're going to go to the next step in the cold call process, which is to share some of the common pain points that the people that buy our product or service have. And the logic here is that we hoped to uncover pain points and a justification by asking questions. That did not work. So at this point, we're just going to get more direct and share the pain points that we help to solve and ask the prospect if they have any of those by saying something like this. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing pretty good over there.